A new New York state law will allow tenants to stay in their unit for up to a year after they've been evicted. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and once again, it's coming out of the great state of New York, one of the places where they're always going to be trying to pass a law that hurts landlords in every possible way. Now, I don't remember covering this article before in the past, but it's quite interesting, this law that they passed up there, that it's giving additional eviction protections to tenants. Now, when we talk about additional eviction protections, we have to keep in mind that the grand majority of evictions are for non-payment of rent. So 95% plus of all evictions are something that really can't be argued, that the tenant didn't pay according to the contract that they signed saying that they would pay. Okay. Now, the other 5%, I'm not talking about those in this specific situation, right? But just keep in mind that 19 out of 20 evictions is for non-payment of rent. So when you tell a tenant, hey, we're going to give you additional time so that you can find housing after you have faced eviction, like this law says, right? Well, what you're really telling the landlord is, hey, you don't get to, get paid. You have to provide a service to this tenant for free without getting paid. Okay? It would be like somebody saying, well, I'm starving. I need food. Well, we're going to allow you to go down to the grocery store, take food off of the shelf until you're able to find a job. And no, you don't have to pay that grocery store back because you're just destitute and poor, and therefore this other person has to pay to for your food. No. Okay. And the reason I always use the grocery store example is because they say, oh, well, housing is a necessity. Food is a necessity as well. But you notice food isn't free, and neither should housing be free. Okay. If they want to give free food away, we're talking about a socialist system, a communist system, in fact, right? Where the government owns the housing and then they ration it out how they see fit. Now, believe me, all the people who say, oh, this is what they want the government in charge of housing, they don't realize what they're really saying, because the government can decide, oh, we're going to give you housing, right? But it's not going to be what you want. It's not going to be where you want. It's not going to be how you want. It's going to be where we deem you need to be. So the government could come up, right? You lived in New York City your whole life and say, oh, you know what? We're going to provide you free housing. But that free housing is in rural West Virginia. Okay? Rural West Virginia. You're going to be out and there's no jobs anywhere nearby. None of your family's anywhere nearby. There's nothing to do out there for you. And you're just like, well, this isn't what I wanted. Well, that's what the government says you should have to live. Okay? You get out there and they're like, oh, well, you're a single person. So no, you don't need a 2-bedroom, right? We're just going to give you a 100 square foot studio. You're not going to be homeless, right? The government is providing the housing. See, this is the problem. When you have the government in charge of stuff, right? The government is the one who dictates and decides how much you need. Yeah, okay? You're sitting there, you're saying, oh, well, I want to be able to live in my specific part of town, in my city, and have all the amenities I want. Well, if you want that stuff, you have to pay. Okay, you cannot get that through a socialized system, period. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent and I just got started. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So what do you think of this new New York state law that gives people additional time to find housing if they are evicted? Okay, up to a year, not paying rent, allowing the landlord to pay your bills for you. Okay, I'm sure there's plenty of tenants out there who are saying, oh, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. Meanwhile, the landlord's going bankrupt. Okay, meanwhile, the building is falling apart because they can't afford maintenance. Goodness, like when you take away someone's property rights, you discourage that person from wanting to be a landlord. And the end result is there's less affordable housing for everyone, not just for the one tenant, right? You might have one or two tenants who win, but in the long term, all this garbage does is ruin the housing market for everyone else. So anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. This article is coming from wyrk.com, and it says, New law allows tenants to not pay in New York State. Yeah, and this article seems to have been written in a more pro landlord format. So, anyway, let's get into it. There is a new law in New York State that allows tenants to stay in the home they are renting even if they do not pay. If you know anyone who owns a rental property, hopefully things are going well. New York State has put a ton of new laws in place that make things more clear in a ton of different aspects of the landlord tenant relationship. If you have someone who is a horrible tenant, look how long they can legally and technically live in your rental unit. An entire year. And sometimes longer than that. Okay. When we were talking about the eviction moratoriums, there were people who didn't pay rent for years. In fact, there are still people inside housing throughout the state of New York who haven't paid since before the moratoriums began. Now, I hope that they are in the process of eviction right now, getting these people up out of these properties, but that's not always going to be the case. Okay, there's people who know the system, they know how to abuse the landlords, they know how to just basically leech and steal, and the end result is that these people haven't paid rent. But the eviction courts and the law for the state, right? They don't see this. The only thing, oh well, these poor tenants. They don't realize that a lot of these tenants are abusing the system. They're abusing it because they want to take advantage of it so they can get something for free. Okay, you're going to put more scammers into place by putting these laws into place. Okay, these scammers, they jump out of the woodwork when they realize they can get something for free, and that's exactly what's happening up there. So yeah, you're ending up in a very, very bad position. The new Attorney General, Letitia James, has a section outlining new protections for evictions, according to the New York State website. And now they're going to go over the what this really means. If you lose a housing case and the judge orders your eviction, you can ask the court for up to 1 year to move if you can show that you cannot find a similar apartment in the same neighborhood. The judge will take into account your health conditions, whether you have children enrolled in school, the hardship on the landlord if you remain, and any other life circumstances that could affect your ability to move. The only consideration they should have is, did you fulfill your end of the contract? Okay? Now, I want you to look at it from the perspective of you bought a car that you can't afford. Now, you need that car in order to get to work. You need that car to be able to transport your children to school, right? But are they going to say, well, the car company can't repossess that car because you need to take your kids to school, and you broke your leg last week, you have a health condition, so therefore we can't take your car away. No, they're going to say, listen, you promised that you were going to pay this note and you didn't pay it. Regardless of any of the other circumstances, that is irrelevant, 100% irrelevant. And the reason I say that is because there will always be something. There will always be an excuse of why people can't pay. Always. And if we allowed people to use excuses to not, fulfill their obligations, their debts that they promised they would pay, then nobody would pay anything ever. Okay? We all have health conditions. We all have family members who are dying. Almost all of us have children. Okay? We always are suffering. We have to plan ahead. We have to come up with alternative solutions. We have to pay our debts, pay our obligations. That is what we all have to do. If we have to make a sacrifice, so be it. I did it. I did it myself. There are so many things I did back when I was younger in order to make sure my rent was paid. I was a tenant too. And it's wrong to say that landlords are the ones who are responsible for making sure that this person has somewhere to live. No, it is your own responsibility. So do it.